Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
Good evening, y'all. It is Friday, December 19th, only 6 days till Christmas. This is Spathon bringing in another episode of The Swamp. Today is the big day for the full Epstein files release, and Democrats are already screaming that the DOJ has failed to meet the deadline, and we have a response from the DOJ, as well as news that the Justice Department already began releasing Epstein files today. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio held one of the longest press conferences ever held by a Secretary of Defense, which lasted for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Secretary Rubio took questions from over 50 journalists during the conference, even putting President Trump to shame. All right, President Trump also, he announced that he will be calling the major health insurance companies to a meeting where he will be bluntly requesting for them to reduce insurance costs for Americans. That's going to get spicy. And the Minnesota House, they held a Fraud Prevention and Agency Oversight Policy Committee hearing on Wednesday, and lawmakers ripped into Governor Tim Walz for allowing this level of fraud to occur on his watch. And Fulton County, Georgia has admitted that back in 2020, they certified 315,000 votes without poll workers' signatures, which is a clear break in the laws protecting voting integrity. And there's a lot more that happened today, so I'm just going to dive straight on in. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like if you have a second, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the daily updates. And if you leave a comment on tonight's episode, I might just read it on the next one, which will be on Monday. And if you notice any article that I open up during the duration of this video, you can find a direct link to that article in the description below. And we're going to start right here with Dan Bongino. I miss this. I actually miss this. It's been a crazy week for me because it's Christmas. I got family in town, and plus I'm working. I have to work Christmas Eve and the day after Christmas, and I'm wrapping up my shopping. So I'm doing my absolute very best to get all of the information for the content for each night's episode throughout this week. And it's been a struggle to try to juggle everything, still working during the day, Christmas shopping, family's here, so a lot going on. But I somehow missed this. I can't believe I actually missed this. With 124,000 likes, 15 million views, Dan Bongino on December 17th announced, "I will be leaving my position with the FBI in January. I want to thank President Trump, AG Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank you, my fellow Americans, for the privilege to serve you. God bless America and all those who defend her." Certainly, pretty sad news. It's unfortunate that he's leaving, especially not even, I guess, pretty much exactly 1 year after the Trump administration took back over. And we're going to be sad to see him go. I'm sure that FBI Director Patel is already working on his replacement. Eager to find who he's going to replace him with. Going to be pretty big shoes to fill, that's for damn sure. It just really sucks, man, because Dan Bongino he's like an ultra patriot, America first. Like, he was gung-ho to get into the FBI to try to root out all the corruption and all the absolute bullshit and nonsense, the bureaucracy. And I hope this isn't a sign that it was just too big for him to handle as far as what his personal mission was when he was going into the FBI to try to clean house, so to speak. Probably not. Matter of fact, I actually have this clip from Eric Daugherty. He actually posted this a couple days ago, which might shed some light as to why Dan Bongino is really stepping down. So it's a direct quote from Dan Bongino himself. He was on Fox News. I think this was a couple of months ago when he, let me see. Yeah, so this interview was a few months ago on Fox and Friends. So we'll hear what Deputy Director Dan Bongino has to say. So let's give this a listen.
Everything for this. I mean, my wife is struggling. I'm not a victim. I'm not Jim Comey. It's fine. I did this, and I'm proud I did it. But if you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Cash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. I'm in there at 7:30 in the morning. He uses the gym. I work out in my apartment. But I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated divorce.
Yeah,
and it's
separate.
hard. I mean, we love each other, and it's hard to be apart.
But you're doing some great work. You're straightening out the FBI. You're moving buildings. There's a lot of change.
One more thing.
Yeah, so that's a clear signal that it was blending, or it was overpowering his personal life, and I'm sure that it was really stressful, to say the least, with how hard that they have to work, because, dude, the FBI the corruption probably runs deeper than we could even imagine. So the amount of work that it would actually take to try to completely clean out the FBI and do the good work probably would take probably a hell of a lot longer than even 4 years, or the maximum amount of time that he would be able to serve in the FBI. But it's really sad to see him go, especially after just 1 year. But, at least he took up the job. He didn't have to. He had one of the most successful podcasts on the entirety of the internet. I'm sure he was getting millions of views for each episode, because he was streaming his podcast on multiple platforms, the Dan Bongino Show. And he'd been doing it for at least a couple of years, I think. Definitely up there on the level of, not higher than Joe Rogan and what he gets in terms of viewership, but he's definitely on the top level, to the point where he was definitely was earning millions of dollars a year running his daily show. So he certainly didn't have to take the job, needless to say, but he did anyway. And I think the American people definitely commend him for that. Even if he's only able to give 1 year, at least he devoted a year of his life to try to get the FBI back to legit once again. So, all right. So anyway, we're going to move on to the White House. This was posted just 3 hours ago, and this is a direct quote from President Trump. It says, "I'm going to call a meeting of the big insurance companies that have gotten so rich, and I'm going to see if they get their price down, to put it very bluntly." President Donald J. Trump. So he's going to be calling a meeting with all the big health insurance executives, I imagine, going to probably call a round table, and he's probably just going to ask them point blank, what can we do to get the prices down for the American people? Because something's got to give, because things have gotten way out of control. Before even Obamacare kicked in, insurance was far better than it is now. Most people didn't even hear about multi-$1,000 deductibles that most of us have to pay now, including myself, where if I go to see a doctor, or God forbid, if I need a surgery or a hospital visit, I have to pay 20% of my entire bill out of pocket, up to $8,000 before it caps out, and my insurance starts covering the rest beyond that. And it's absolutely insane, dude. Like 15 years ago, I had to get insurance, I had to get a surgery. I had kidney problems, and I was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. And the whole thing, I had to go through 6 weeks of follow-up. They had to remove a stent after 6 weeks. I probably went back to the urologist like 4 or 5 times. All told, it was like $350 for everything, including my prescriptions and everything. And I just had average, everyday, regular-ass insurance. Nothing top tier. I wasn't working for some like mega corporation that had the best insurance on the planet. No, it was pretty average as far as I know. And it's gotten completely out of control. So hopefully President Trump can at least he's he's inviting them to come to the table. I mean, I'm sure they don't have any like actual obligation to do so, but if the president of the United States calls you and wants to convene a meeting, I mean, you'd be crazy not to show up. So we'll just have to see what happens with that. I haven't seen a timeline. I haven't seen a date yet. I'm sure that's coming up pretty shortly. I imagine he's probably going to want to try to convene them sooner rather than later. So, and here at the bottom, Dealmaker-in-Chief President Trump is calling a meeting with the largest health insurance companies to negotiate lower prices for the American people. I think that's a fantastic idea. At least, I don't know, brainstorm or something. It's probably not going to be too difficult to figure out what the root of the problem really is. I mean, I know it's certainly Obamacare, but it's got to have its tentacles stretched all over the place at this point. I don't even know if you could even root it out completely at this point, because it's been so long and it's just so deep rooted. And it's just an absolute disaster. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to DOJ spokesperson 47, the official account of the Justice Department's Office of Public Affairs. And it says ridiculous framing. This is with regard to the Epstein files. So let me see, just real quick. So I'm going to do this from Politico first. The DOJ won't meet Friday's deadline to release all the Epstein files. I'm not going to go through the details of it, but that will be linked in the description. But the DOJ responded to that headline saying, ridiculous framing, the DOJ is releasing a massive tranche of new documents that the Biden and Obama administrations refused to release. The story here, the Trump administration is providing levels of transparency that prior administrations never even contemplated. The initial deadline is being met as we work diligently to protect victims. Now, it did get community noted, which I just now realized they don't show for some reason, community notes, they don't come up on my phone. I usually don't catch these until I'm like in the middle of doing the show. So this says HR 4405 passed with bipartisan majorities in Congress and signed by President Trump, requires that all documents related to Epstein be released by December 19th of 2025. And that's what I remembered too. I definitely remembered that the bill that President Trump was signing was for the Epstein files to be released in their entirety by December 19th. And Democrats, they've been doing the countdown, 3 more days until they have to release the files, 2 more days. And they were all saying like it's not going to happen. They're not going to release it. They were already blaming Trump. They were already blaming the DOJ for not releasing the files. And they were doing this like 3 or 4 days ago, up until including today. So, matter of fact, I actually got this from Chuck Schumer, and he posted 6 hours ago. The deadline is here. Today is the deadline for the White House to release the Epstein files. Not the White House, dude, the Department of Justice. The White House, they signed off on the release of the Epstein files, but I get it. The Trump administration, yada, yada. So their failure to do so is against the law. I am working closely with attorneys to assess what documents are still being withheld. We will not stop until the whole truth comes out. And he released his statement, Leader Schumer's statement on the Trump administration illegally refusing to release complete Epstein files. Out of Washington, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat of New York, of course, released the following statement after Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said Friday morning that the Department of Justice will not follow federal law by refusing to release the full Epstein files today. Yeah, I'm sure highly doubt he went out to the podium and he announced to the press that the Department of Justice will not be following the federal law today. I highly doubt that's a direct quote. So anyway, there is a quote here. At least it seems that there is a quote here. And it reads, the law Congress passed and President Trump signed was clear as can be. The Trump administration had 30 days to release all the Epstein files, not just some. Failure to do so was breaking the law. This just shows the Department of Justice, Donald Trump, and Pam Bondi are hell-bent on hiding the truth. Senate Democrats are working closely with attorneys for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and with outside legal experts to assess what documents are being withheld and what is being covered up by Pam Bondi. We will not stop until the whole truth comes out. People want the truth and continue to demand the immediate release of all the Epstein files. This is nothing more than a cover-up to protect Donald Trump from his ugly past. Yeah, bullshit. However, I will say this is absolutely idiotic. It's beyond retarded that they didn't release the files in their entirety today. Look, they didn't have to start releasing files today. They could have started releasing files the day after President Trump signed this bill into law. Should have started releasing them. Anything that didn't need redaction that they had withheld from the public, should have started releasing them immediately. And they should have just been rolling out these tranches of Epstein files on a rolling basis. They could have released more and more on a daily basis, but now we're at the deadline and they haven't released it yet. And of course, the Democrats are going to jump all over this. They're going to accuse the Trump administration of hiding stuff, accusing Trump of cozying up to Epstein, and they're burying evidence that he and Epstein were best friends and they were engaging in all this illegal shit. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And frankly, it really pisses me off that they didn't release everything today, because this is exactly how they're going to spin it. They're going to spin it that the Trump administration's hiding all of this nefarious, evil, pedo stuff, and it's all unnecessary. I don't care how many documents they had to go through to redact the victims' names out of it. They had 30 days to do it, and I'm sure that they were in the room consulting with the lawmakers and those who were drafting up this bill for President Trump to sign. And if the DOJ needed 60 days, I'm sure they would have made it 60 days. So I'm sure the DOJ said, oh yeah, of course we can have all this done in 30 days. Well, it's been 30 days and still nothing. Well, I mean, that's not fair. There's not nothing. There's, here, let me actually, I think I posted a response to this. Yeah, so here we go, from abcnews.go.com. So Epstein files released include a complaint made to the FBI years before the first investigation and officials said there'd be several 100,000 pages released on Friday. Now, technically, the deadline hasn't actually really technically occurred as of this recording quite yet. So this article came out at 6:02 p.m. today, and right now, as of this recording, it's 7:22 p.m. So this just came out about an hour and a half ago. So the deadline, technically speaking, is probably 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds Eastern Standard Time. So perhaps the DOJ might release everything here in the next couple of hours. If they do, then they'll meet the deadline. So I'm just not, I would not be the least bit surprised if they don't. If they release, even if they release a ton of documents, if they leave just one single page out, the Democrats are going to jump all over that. They didn't release all the files. They're breaking the law. We must impeach everybody. And you kind of know where that's going to go. So a complaint to the FBI about Jeffrey Epstein filed years before he was first investigated for child sex abuse is among the materials the Justice Department made public Friday as part of its mandated release of files from the investigations into the convicted sex offender, whose connection to the rich and powerful has fueled countless conspiracy theories. The release contains what appears to be the first known report to federal law enforcement that Epstein was involved in child exploitation. A September 1996 complaint filed with the FBI's Miami office accusing Epstein of participating in child P more than 8 years before the first law enforcement investigation into Epstein was launched. Yeah, that's kind of a bombshell. The complainant, Maria Farmer, said that she was a professional artist and took pictures of her youngest sisters, aged 12 and 16, for personal use, and alleged that Epstein stole the photos and negatives and that he may have sold the photos to potential buyers. The complaint said Epstein also requested that she take photos of young girls at swimming pools, and that Epstein threatened her and said he would burn her house down if she told anyone about the photos. Farmer, whose name was redacted from the documents, confirmed to ABC News that she was the complainant. Speaking to ABC News by phone following the materials release, she said, "I'm just really grateful. I'm finally able to be vindicated. I feel redeemed. And I'm slightly shocked that they've released anything. I didn't expect it," Farmer said. Friday's release includes thousands of newly released photos, some of which are graphic and heavily redacted with black boxes over faces and body parts. Notations on some redacted images indicate that they were not scanned due to there being child abuse material. So it sounds like they're even releasing, not safe for work related images, but they're redacting out enough to where it's not, crossing the bounds into illegal activity. Because the way that the law was written, or at least the bill that Trump signed, was that they had to release everything, except leaving out the names of the victims and essentially not doxing victims. So if they leave that stuff out, the Democrats are going to jump all over him, as I've already said repeatedly. So anyway, the release also appears to contain images from Epstein's 50th birthday party in January of 2003, many of which contain images of other people who are obscured by black boxes. There are dozens of photos of what appears to be the interior of Epstein's New York City apartment after it was searched by authorities in 2019. In addition to newly released materials, the documents include many files that have been previously released, including documents from more than 50 civil and criminal cases involving Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The release also includes the full 354-page text of the 1999 edition of the book Massage for Dummies. The DOJ faced a Friday deadline for the release of all remaining Epstein files after Congress last month passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, following the blowback the administration received seeking the release of the materials. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, in an interview on Friday morning on Fox and Friends, said, "I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and then over the next couple of weeks, I expect several 100,000 more." Well, that's breaking the law, dude. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche basically is admitting to breaking the law, because the law did say it didn't say to start releasing Epstein files on December the 19th. It said to release them in their entirety by December the 19th. Several Democratic lawmakers responding in the afternoon to Blanche's comments objected to only a partial release of the files Friday. Well, I can't entirely blame them for it, because, that's not what was agreed to. What was agreed to was that everything gets released today. In a letter to members of Congress Friday afternoon, Blanche wrote, "The department has worked diligently to meet the Act's deadline, but The volume of the materials to be reviewed means that the department must publicly produce responsive documents on a rolling basis. Well, you should have started that shit like a month ago. You should have started it back on day one after Trump signed this bill into law. Blanche, in his Fox appearance, said the most important thing that the Attorney General has talked about, that FBI Director Kash Patel has talked about, is that we protect victims. And so what we're doing is we're looking at every single piece of paper that we're going to produce, making sure that every victim, their name, their identity, their story, to the extent it needs to be protected, is completely protected. I have a feeling they did this years ago. They probably already went through all of these files a long time ago. They probably redacted all this shit years ago. And sorry, man, I ain't buying it. The Epstein Files Act says the Justice Department may withhold or redact the identities of Epstein victims and contains exemptions that would allow the DOJ to withhold records that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. Blanche said there's a lot of eyes looking over the documents to ensure victim identities have been redacted. The Justice Department in recent weeks has enlisted scores of attorneys from the National Security Division to conduct the review, according to sources familiar with the matter. Those documents will come in all different forms, photographs and other materials associated with all of the investigations into Mr. Epstein, Blanche said. He further suggested in the interview that the administration's review has been partially hamstrung by a ruling from a judge in the Southern District of New York that demanded the administration verify that its review is fully protecting the identities of victims. Well, see, they probably should have led with that because that could still, in whatever tiny little conceivable way that it would justify them in rolling this out past the deadline, that would be the most understandable, because even if they did redact all these documents years ago, which I'm sure they freaking did, this would make sense that they would still have to go through it a second time with a fine-tooth comb, because there's a court order or a ruling by a judge in the New York Southern District that demands the administration they have to do that. They have to go through everything, probably more than once, to make sure every single name is completely redacted, even though I'm sure they already are. So, all right, so let's see how much of this is left. Okay, so there's actually quite a bit left. Let me see if I can get a little bit more. Blanche said there's a lot of eyes. We already got that. So the documents come in all different forms. Got that. Okay, got that. All right, when asked whether the American public should expect any additional criminal cases to come in the wake of the release of the files, Blanche said, look, as the president directed, it's still being investigated, and I expect that will continue to happen. So we, as of today, there's no new charges coming out, but we are investigating. President Donald Trump recently directed the Justice Department to investigate high-profile Democrats associated with Epstein, a task that Attorney General Pam Bondi then referred to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. The Justice Department and FBI announced in July that they would be releasing no additional Epstein files after several top officials, including Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, had, prior to joining the administration, accused the government of shielding information regarding the Epstein case. Yeah, that was scratching a lot of heads. People are really wondering what was up with that. So the Senate subsequently voted to approve the Epstein transparency bill passed by the House, after which President Trump signed into law. Critics of Trump have speculated about the degree to which the president, who has a friendship with Epstein until they had a falling out in 2004. Actually, I don't believe that it was 2004. I think it was in the 90s, right? I'll have to double check, and maybe you can check on my behalf or drop it in the comments if you know. When was Epstein kicked out of Mar-a-Lago? I thought it was in like 97 or like 98 or something. I thought it was way before 2004. So while Trump has accused several well-known Democrats of having ties to the disgraced financier, well, of course they do. I mean, didn't Jeffrey Epstein have a painting of freaking Bill Clinton in a blue dress hanging up on his wall? All right, perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed, because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files, Trump wrote on social media after signing the bill, and so on and so forth. It just wraps up with, like Epstein died by suicide in 2019 and so on and so forth. And so that's the latest. That's the latest on the whole Epstein saga, Epstein drama. And I'll just keep my eyes open, keep my eyes peeled as to what's going on with it, what more they're going to release. I'm sure as the information comes out, the public or the press, the media, they're going to be mulling through all of that and trying to dig up anything they can, especially the Democrats, man. They're probably right now, those thousands of documents they released today, there's probably these large rooms filled with like these Democrat operatives that are just frantically sweating bullets, just digging through this paper frantically, just trying to find something. Trump. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Would not surprise me at all if they spend the entire weekend just just absolutely just psychopathically just trashing through all of these files, just trying to find anything they can to destroy Trump, to try to impeach him as soon as humanly possible. All right, so anyway, Kristen Robbins, this was back on December the 18th. Tim Walz' cynical and desperate attempt to blame me for his fraud and mismanagement is failing. I will continue to protect whistleblowers and expose Walz's fraud and corruption. So this is with regard to the House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Policy Committee hearing, Adult Day Services. This happened on Wednesday, December 17th of 2025. It's on the Minnesota state government level. And so they held a hearing with regard to all of this fraud that the federal government's been digging up in the state of Minnesota. Remember the $1 billion, over $1 billion in blatant fraud has been uncovered in the state of Minnesota. And Tim Walz he keeps trying to pass the buck, trying to deflect blame, trying to downplay it as much as humanly possible. And some of these lawmakers are really pissed off about it. So let's give this one a watch.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to that. So we did receive your letter, Inspector General, asking us to share information with you on credible whistleblower reports. And to date, we have not, because there is no trust, as you might understand. This fraud has been perpetuated on your watch, and the whistleblowers who reach out to us within the department are terrified, and they feel that they've been retaliated against already. They feel that they are very afraid. They're afraid to reach out to us. And if they thought we were then turning around and giving it to you, we would not have whistleblowers. So we initiated a whistleblower portal last spring in response to people who were afraid to come to you, and that has received hundreds of tips. Belatedly, you all also put out a whistleblower report portal this.
Well, I can imagine that whistleblowers are a lot more afraid of going to Democrats with regard to blowing the whistle than they would with Republicans.
Fall, which I
that
think
would just be a wild guess.
is also generating tips. But when I get credible allegations of fraud from whistleblowers, we meet with them.
After all, they're all about cancel culture.
We interview them. We ferret it out as much as possible. But as you know, legislators do not have access to bank records, health records, subpoena power, the SWIFT payment system that the state uses to pay things. So I can only get an investigation so far. But when we get it, we go to the U.S. Attorney, the FBI, and the Office of Legislative Auditor, who have access to all those records. So our whistleblowers are being protected,
sure they're already pouring
and
through
they
it.
are also being reviewed for further investigation. And I would like to have a more collaborative relationship with you, but I have to say, if whistleblowers thought we were turning everything over to you, it would stop.
All right, man. Yikes. Okay, so I got another one from Dustin Grage. Watch, disability advocate Nathaniel Olson just ripped into Tim Walz and Minnesota's DHS during today's Fraud and Prevention Oversight Committee hearing. And they give some extensive quotes, so I'm just going to go straight to the video. I'm assuming this is the transcript from the video. So let's give this a watch.
Madam
About
Chair,
2 minutes.
I'm Nathaniel M. Olson, a disability advocate for the state of Minnesota. I've heard the commissioners and the Department of Human Services, but the one thing that I'm freaking worried about is this freaking fraud that is happening over our state, where there's 600,000 disability people in the state of Minnesota that could suffer. And sadly, it's quite interesting that we have Governor Walz speaking in front of the state and saying that this fraud is nothing but the side. But my people are done suffering. We're done with this fraud. We're done with the Department of Human Services coming up here and saying, oh, we're going to figure this out. This has been too long. The administration knew that this fraud was coming.
He's pissed.
I talked to families, parents.
You should be.
Everyone have been reaching out to me and saying, oh, this is what is happening to my child. This is what is happening to my child. We're afraid. We need to put aside these differences, and we need to come together and put a stop to this fraud. Our governor is not doing anything to help us.
Oh, of course not.
Sit here and decide he wants to blame Donald J., the president of the United States, who has nothing to do with this.
No.
There is a time
Really glad he said that.
to hold our governor accountable, and I'm not seeing it. This fraud is outrageous. And I'm very scared for my little brother if he goes into ICS home. But right now he's home with my parents, and he's going to stay there because I'm going to keep fighting for these disability people, because none of them are right here, and I am their voice. It is time for us to say enough is enough. I'm done. And it makes me sad to see what's happening to our state. This was
Hey,
a
man,
great state.
get the illegal immigrants out of there.
was.
That'd be a start.
But all of this fraud that is coming around here, all these excuses that is happening, needs to stop.
They don't care about you. They don't care about the American people.
Needs to become a great state again. Thank you, and thank you guys for your guys' hard work.
Yeah, man, it's like you really think that state level Democrats really give a shit about the disabled? They don't care. They don't care about everyday voting people either. They don't. They just care about power. That's all they want. They're lusting for power, and that's why they want to keep all these illegal immigrants in. No matter what they do, they just downplay it. I mean, look, like, not all of these immigrants are illegal, obviously. Even most, if not the vast majority of the Somalis that are in Minnesota, they're not textbook illegal immigrants per se. Although many of them, of course, probably also not most of them, but the vast majority of the fraud that was committed in Minnesota appears to be coming from the Somalis who are in Minnesota. Over $1 billion. And I wonder if he even knows. Like, does that dude even know how much of that money that was fraudulently stolen from the people in Minnesota went to foreign terrorist organizations? I mean, I'm assuming he probably knows that, but yeah, I mean, that dude was pissed, and he has every right to be, and he absolutely should be. I think everybody in Minnesota should be pissed off about this. Okay, so this comes from HHS Rapid Response from just a few hours ago. This week, ACFHHS, which is the federal agency supporting economic and social well-being of families, children, individuals, and communities, the assistant secretary for that agency, who is ACF Adams, Alex J. Adams, he fired off letters to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and a nonprofit that received hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal grants, quote, concerned that they might be used to fuel illegal and mass migration, end quote. HHS probes whether billions in taxpayer money was used to fuel illegals and mass migration, which I'm sure quite a lot of it probably was. And we've got this from the New York Post, which expands on this, and it says, get rid of that. Department of Health and Human Services is investigating whether billions in taxpayer dollars sent to Minnesota social service programs were used to unlawfully fuel illegal and mass migration, according to letters obtained by the Post. Alex Adams, Assistant Secretary of HHS Administration for Children and Families, fired off letters Monday to Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and a nonprofit that received hundreds of thousands in federal grants to provide Head Start programs. Quote, we are concerned that they might be used to fuel illegal and mass migration. And so, let's see, saying that the attempt to track the federal monies was about accountability for the American taxpayers. Right now, we're at the exploratory phase. American taxpayers generally fund these programs. We're trying to get data from them that will help give us confidence that there's not fraud. But Adams added his agency has legitimate reason to think that they've been using taxpayer dollars incorrectly. Yeah, that's an understatement. Given a series of recent news reports about fraud in Minnesota's social services, the state raked in more than $690 million for its safety net programs during the final fiscal year of President Biden's administration, when HHS was run by Secretary Xavier Becerra. I can't remember how to say his name. Now, HHS is requesting a comprehensive list by December 26th of state entities that got funding from fiscal years 2019 to 2025. And do you think they're really going to produce that information? They might get a page or two, but I highly doubt they're going to get the real answers. But we'll see, man. December 26th. Of course, they're going to say, well, we were out for Christmas. You got to give us more time. Anyway, HHS ACF made more than 1,000 federal grants to entities in the Gopher State during the fiscal years, totaling $8.6 billion, according to a review of federal spending records. Between fiscal years of 22 and 25, HHS ACF shelled out more than $4.5 billion. Like, dude, no wonder. There's no wonder our deficit's approaching $40 trillion. $40,000 billion. Okay, so anyway, at least 130,000 illegal migrants resided in Minnesota as of 2023, an increase of around 40,000 from 2019 and roughly 2% of the state's population, according to Pew Research. Adams' letter noted public statements from hundreds of Minnesota Department of Human Services employees alleging that clear warnings of fraud were repeatedly disregarded, that whistleblowers faced retaliation, and that widespread misuse of federal funds may have persisted for years under your leadership. And let's see. So those allegations, which are under investigation by the Treasury Department and the Republican-led House Oversight Committee, place the blame on Walz for having enabled a massive fraud scheme that involved mainly Somali immigrants, bilking more than $1 billion from taxpayers. And I don't know if they're going to give the quote, but allegedly Tim Walz went on TV at some point recently and he said he takes full accountability. So who knows what that really means? I don't know. So these concerns have been heightened by recent federal prosecutions and additional allegations that substantial portions of federal resources were fraudulently diverted away from the American families they were intended to assist, added the ACF Assistant Secretary. Federal prosecutors in Minnesota have convicted dozens of fraudsters for stealing more than $250 million from taxpayers. So look, $250 million right there. They've already convicted those people, convicted dozens of them already. And I'm honestly don't even know if that's in addition to the $1 billion. I'm assuming it is, because if they've already convicted them, then this $250 million probably was discovered probably at least a couple of years ago. So anyway, many had ties to the Somali community and the fake nonprofit Feeding Our Future, which nabbed the federal funds while promising to provide meals to poor children in the state, only to use the cash for lavish cars and luxury real estate holdings. And of course, that's Governor Tim Walz, the moron himself. And the ACF programs under review include Parents in Community Action, also Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and Community Services Block Grant. Also, oh man, there's a bunch. Social Services Block Grant, the Title 4E Foster Care, also Refugee Cash Assistance, and Refugee Medical Assistance, also the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, and finally, the Child Care and Development Fund. Quote, the Trump administration has made clear its commitment to rooting out fraud, protecting taxpayer dollars, and ensuring program integrity across all federal benefit programs, wrote Adams in requesting all administrative data on grantees, their recipients, and subrecipients. And we've got a bunch of acronyms here. The HHS official demanded data from 2019 to 2025 from these organizations, which I'm sure are these organizations here that I just named off. For CCDF and Parents in Community Actions, which receive grants to oversee federal Head Start programs, Adams asked for data from 2022 to 25. And let's see. This information is necessary for ACF to conduct a thorough review of program operations and to assess the extent of any irregularities that may have occurred, Adams wrote in the letters to Walz. I'm assuming that's Adams there. And the data must include the recipient name, the address, the social security number, the date of birth, a number as applicable, and any state identification numbers used for program administration, the letter noted. This information is necessary for ACF to conduct a thorough review of program operations and to assess the extent of any irregularities that may have occurred. Reps for Walz's office and Frey's office did not immediately respond to requests for comment. I mean, that's basically at the end of every single article whenever they're talking about whether it's fraud or if it's just politics in general. Nobody ever comments. Not anymore. They don't ever comment. We reached out to a request for a comment, but we didn't get one. They never do. All right, so we're going to move on to the next topic from Tommy Pigou. Secretary Rubio just held one of the longest press conferences of any Secretary of State ever. He took questions from almost 50 journalists, often more than one, for over 2 hours on a countless number of topics. The Trump administration is the most transparent in American history. I would absolutely agree with that. That's for sure, at least in recent history. And the Department of State. So this is the video in its entirety. And I want you to see how long this is. Obviously not going to have any opportunity to play this in its entirety. It went for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I thought it was 2 hours and 10 minutes. It went even 5 minutes longer than that. And for the vast majority of the video, he just takes questions from the press. And I don't know if he planned on doing that from the start or not. Maybe because it's the end of the year, he wants transparency, or he wants to give transparency. Maybe he just decided to stand up there until every single question was answered. Or unless he went over 2 hours, which he did. So this says, watch, Secretary Rubio delivers an end-of-year press briefing highlighting the Trump administration's America First foreign policy accomplishments and wins for the American people. So we're not going to watch the whole thing, but I do have the cliff notes, and I've got several videos, so we'll look through some of the highlights of the entire press conference. And this starts with rapid response. Secretary Rubio opens his year-end press briefing, and of course it reads off a long quote. So we'll just hear from Secretary Rubio.
When I took over Secretary of State, I'll refer you back to the hearings we had in the Senate in January about the role I hope to play. And I believe very strongly this president was elected. One of the reasons why he was elected, very specific things, but one of the reasons why President Trump was elected is sort of an understanding among the American people that our foreign policy was in need of a complete recalibration. A recalibration because the world had dramatically changed. Many of the institutions, policies, assumptions that our foreign policy was operating under were built upon a world that no longer existed. And it required
That's a very fair point.
That. One of the assumptions that I think we had lost during this period of time, and I don't mean to make this an academic lecture, but I wanted to give you some insight into the broader thinking, as I highlighted at that hearing less than a year, almost a year ago now, is one of the assumptions was the loss of the notion of the national interest in our foreign policy. At the core of foreign policy needs to be the national interest of the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't issues and things we care about in the world, but at its core, the core principle of the national interest, the core principle behind our foreign policy needs to be our national interests. So you have to, first of all, define what...
Yeah, dude, not the Davos group, not the UN, not the European Union, none of that bullshit, man. It's the United States. It's the American citizens first. That's who the government's supposed to be working for, and that's who they're constitutionally obligated to be working for. But we don't really seem to be getting that a whole lot, not at least until Trump stepped in.
The national interest, and then you have to apply it. We defined it as we are in favor of foreign policies that make America safer or stronger or more prosperous. Hopefully all three, but at least one of those three. And then it requires you to prioritize. Even the richest, most powerful and influential country on earth has limited resources, has limited time. And it has to be able to dedicate those resources and time through a process of prioritization. That includes geographic prioritization. It also includes issue prioritization. And that's what we intend to do here. Then you have to have the mechanisms of foreign policy to deliver on it. In essence, you have to have a Department of State and a National Security Council and all the elements of U.S. foreign policy influence and power to deliver, to identify and then deliver on those priorities. And that's what we've attempted to do here, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. There's more work to be done. There's things we will improve upon. But generally speaking, it was the genesis behind the reorganization of the department, oftentimes applying reforms that secretaries of states of both parties, appointed by presidents of both parties, have long sought to do. And we're very proud of that going into effect and continuing to work forward. I think we generally avoided, massive disruptions to our operation, although any transition involves some disruption. But we're very happy with the way we empowered our regional bureaus, meaning our embassies and the folks at the desks here behind the regions have become more empowered and having influence over every element of our foreign policy, particularly how it's applied tactically. At the same time, one of the things we looked at is foreign aid. Foreign aid is not a separate activity of the United States government. It is an element and a tool of our foreign policy, and it should be used for the purpose of furthering the national interest. That doesn't mean we don't care about human rights. That doesn't mean we don't care about starvation. That doesn't mean we don't care about hunger. That doesn't mean we don't care about humanitarian need. What it does mean, however, is that even foreign aid, which is not charity, it is an act of the U.S. taxpayer. Now, American charities are free to give their money to whoever they want, as long as it's not a sanctioned entity. But the United States and the taxpayer money should be spent in furtherance of our foreign policy, should be spent in places and on things.
Well, in the best interest of the American people, right?
That is not unlimited. We have a limited amount of money that we can dedicate to foreign aid and humanitarian assistance, and that has to be applied in a way that furthers our national interests, and that's what we have sought to do as well. And in that endeavor as well, we have empowered the regional bureaus and our embassies to play a dramatic role. In fact, they are not just the implementers of this. They, in many cases, are the ones that are suggesting and are leading the response. And so bringing the tools of foreign aid underneath the umbrella of our broader foreign policy has been an important and dramatic reform. Even in the midst of all that, we remain engaged around the world, including in conflicts that perhaps are not central to everyday life in America, but the president has made it a priority to be a peacemaker. And so you've seen us engaged, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or India and Pakistan, or Thailand and Cambodia, which is an ongoing challenge, or the tragedy we see now in Sudan, or the potential for further strife in South Sudan and that falling apart. I mean, no matter Armenia and Azerbaijan, we are always looking for opportunities, if possible, to play the role of a mediator that brings about the avoidance of war or the ending of conflicts. And obviously, in many of these cases, you can get people to the table and agree, and then there's the implementation process. And so we've made progress in many of these, particularly in getting them to agree to certain conditions. Obviously, it's ongoing work to make sure that those are implemented and applied. And some of these, conflicts have deep roots that go back many, many years. But we are prepared to be engaged and helpful in ways that perhaps other nations can't. We've been viewed as indispensable in that regard, and it's a role the president takes great pride in the promotion of peace around the world, and something he deserves a lot of credit for. He is personally engaged in all of this. Obviously, the big one was the situation with Gaza, which again is ongoing. There is now a ceasefire. There's that war is no longer going on at the scale and scope and all the other things that were going on before. But obviously there's more work to remain. We are still through the process of trying to implement phase 1 and lead to phase 2 and phase 3. That is a long-term project, some of which will extend beyond the 4 years of this administration, but I thought was a very important achievement as well. So we have a lot to be proud about. I know you probably have some specific questions, and we can get to those, but I wanted to let that, lay that out as the preface and predicate for everything we're going to do today.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, wait, that was his entire speech, and he was just going to go straight to questions at that point. No, it sounds like he expands on more information, but I mean, he's right, man. The times, they're a-changing, and the world, it's gotten a lot smaller. Nations have changed. They've advanced. New countries are engaging in like space initiatives, for example. A lot of wars have ended and so on and so forth. And did you notice that he didn't even read a prompter during that entire video clip? At least it didn't appear that he did. I mean, Marco Rubio is definitely a smart guy, and he obviously takes his job seriously, and he handles the Secretary of State job very well. All right, so we're going to move on to the next thing. Secretary Rubio on promoting people on the basis of merit, not a DEI score. And we'll give this a quick watch.
If they don't see the opportunity that by working hard and being successful, I'm going to be able to get ahead, they think they're reading roadblocks, they may leave and go work for another agency or outside of government. So we want to promote good people on the basis of merit. And I do think we have made changes. In fact, I just today approved a list of foreign service promotions for the president to submit to Congress. And it's on that new basis. So I'm really happy with that program. And look, we'll tinker with it. We'll improve it as time goes on. But we thought it was critically important that people be promoted on the basis of merit and skill and not on all these other things, and certainly not on a DEI score.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody with any level-headed common sense would fully and absolutely agree to that we should be hiring and promoting based on merit. We have to be promoting a meritocracy, not DEI. And this comes from, actually, all of these are going to come from Marco Rubio. I've got several of them, so I'm just going to roll down from one to the next. It looks like all of the captions or all the posts, the text of these posts are just going to be quote after quote. So I'm just going to go through and just play one after the next.
Our interest in Venezuela and in the region is the national interest of the United States. And in Venezuela, we have an illegitimate regime that not only does not cooperate with the United States, but openly cooperates with narco-terrorists and others who threaten the national security of our country. Our interest.
Yeah, I don't know why the hell these clips are so damn quiet. I mean, I'm maxing out the volume. Okay, so this one talking about Hamas. So we're going to get into that.
Let me just couch it to you this way.
There we go. That's
Everyone
better.
wants peace. No one wants to return to a war. If Hamas is ever in a position in the future that they can threaten or attack Israel, you're not going to have peace. Okay? You're not going to convince anyone to invest money in Gaza if they believe another war is going to happen in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I would just ask everyone to focus on what are the kind of weaponries and capabilities that Hamas would need in order to threaten or attack Israel as a baseline for what disarmament needs to look like. Because you're not going to have peace. If 2 years from now Hamas is launching rockets or killing Israelis or carrying out, God forbid, another 7th of October type terrorist attack and so forth, you're not going to have peace. So who's going to invest in a peace? Who's going to invest in rebuilding a place that's going to get destroyed again in a future war? So that's why disarmament is so critical. Now, what that entails, we're going to leave that to the technical teams to work on. It would have to be something, obviously, that they're willing to agree to, that our partners can push them and pressure them to agree to. It also has to be something that Israel agrees to. In order for that to work, both sides have to agree on it, and we need the space to do it. But that's the way to think about it, okay? You cannot have a Hamas that can threaten Israel in the future. If they can, you won't have peace. So that's the goal. All right.
Well, I thought that disarmament was at the top of that list or among the top 5 items on that 20-item list that they agreed to, and they still haven't disarmed. So what the hell? Okay, so this one is regarding Russia and Ukraine.
The reason why this war hasn't ended, and that is because there's complex factors at play. I know that sounds like a throwaway line, but it's true. What we have tried to do in this entire process, and let's be clear about this. I mean, the United States is engaged in this. The president says this, and I'll translate what I think he's trying to say to you in all of this, and I think he's been pretty clear about it, is it's not our war. It's a war in another continent. We have equities, we have engagement in this war, but it's not
absolutely
our war,
correct.
But we have been told by everybody, I think everybody would agree, that there's only one nation on earth, there's only one entity on earth that can actually talk to both sides and figure out whether there's a way to end this war peacefully. And that's the United States.
Yeah,
and we've
for sure.
invested a lot of time, a lot of energy at the...
Well, mainly because the United States is the one country that both of those countries have been talking to, that they have agreed to talk to. So, I mean, yeah, it absolutely makes perfect sense. And it wasn't the United States that started the war. Of course, we're funding it, and Europe is funding it too. Actually, Europe is funding both sides. Europe is funding Ukraine, and they're funding Russia. Through oil, natural gas, energy resources. They're getting a lot of their energy from Russia, and Russia's using that money that they're sending energy to European Union, and the European Union sending the money back in the form of just cash, just cash money, and they're using it to fund the war machine. So
highest levels of our government. I believe, President Trump has had more meetings with foreign leaders and others on the war in Ukraine than on any other subject, including trade. He's invested a lot of time. Steve and Jared have invested time. I've invested time. The vice president, the Secretary of War, others, Secretary of Treasury, and more have invested a tremendous amount of time and energy.
Yeah, I think they said Trump spent over 30 hours on this just over the last 2 weeks.
What can Ukraine live with, and what can
just
Russia live
Russia
with?
and Ukraine.
Identify what both sides' positions are and see if we can sort of drive them towards each other to some agreement. Wars end generally in one of two ways. Surrender by one side for another, or a negotiated settlement. We don't see surrender anytime in the near future by either side, and so only a negotiated settlement gives us the opportunity to end this war. A negotiated settlement requires two things: both sides to get something out of it, and both sides to give something. And we're trying to figure out what can Russia give and what do they expect to get, what can Ukraine give and what can Ukraine expect to get. In the end, the decision will be up to Ukraine and up to Russia. It will not be up to the United States. So that's the role we are trying to play in this. And that's why you see so many meetings going on. This is not about
shouldn't have meddled in it in the beginning.
Anybody. It is about determining what both sides expect and need to have, and what both sides are prepared to give in return for it, and figuring out whether we can have those two overlap. And of course, that takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. It can't generally be done in the media or in press conferences. I think we've made progress, but we have ways to go. And obviously, the hardest issues are always the last issues.
Okay, well, at least he's being honest with that there's still probably a long ways to go with regard to this conflict. And I mean, like Ukraine, they don't have any obligation to give up anything. I mean, they were invaded. It was Russia who invaded them. So if they don't want to give up any land, they don't have any obligation to do that. So I don't know, man. Who knows how long that thing's going to go on for? So this, let's see, this clip is with regard to Venezuela. Narco trafficking. So let's hear the latest on that.
When it comes to the Western Hemisphere, the single most serious threat to the United States from the Western Hemisphere is from transnational terrorist criminal groups, primarily focused on narco trafficking, but they're in all sides businesses as well. So the good news is we have a lot of countries in the region that openly cooperate and work with us to confront these challenges. Mexico, their level of cooperation with us is the highest it's ever been in their history. Throughout Central America, for the most part, except for maybe Nicaragua and to some extent Honduras, we've had great cooperation from Ecuador, from El Salvador, from Ecuador being in South America, but across the Pacific coast where we're also undertaking efforts. Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, these are all nations that cooperate with us openly in search of stability in the region. You move to the Caribbean basin, in Trinidad, in Guyana, in Jamaica, in the Dominican Republic, countries that openly cooperate with us. Even Colombia, despite its unusual president, has institutions in that country that work very closely with us, and those ties remain unimpeded and unaffected. So all of this is very positive. There's one place that doesn't cooperate, and it's the illegitimate regime in Venezuela. Not only do they not cooperate with us, they openly cooperate with terrorist and criminal elements. For example, they invite Hezbollah in Iran to operate from their territory. But they also allow the ELN and the FARC dissidents not just to operate from inside of Venezuelan territory, to control Venezuelan territory, unencumbered, unimpeded. On top of that, we know that they are in cahoots with drug trafficking organizations. It's not just that they don't work with us against these organizations. Okay, it's that they openly, cooperate with these guys and allow them to operate. So these guys are, marching in and out, doing whatever they want from Venezuelan territory, and it's a challenge. And so that's why that's received so much attention. But I would urge you to not just focus on that, but also focus on all the other things we're doing in the region, including, for example, standing up this gang suppression force in Haiti. which we were looking for 5,500 forces. We already have pledges of up to 7,500 forces from a variety of countries. We've seen donors step up to fund that effort. That's a very important effort. It all ties together cohesively. But the goal here is to bring security and stability to the hemisphere, to the region we live in, okay, which has not received enough attention. To bring the elements of American power to achieve that, to do it in partnership with as many countries as are willing to work with us in that regard. That's the goal here, and it's comprehensive and involves more than just one place. What makes Venezuela stand out is that the regime there actually cooperates with the terrorists.
It is absolutely wild, the amount of stuff that Marco Rubio is juggling all at the same time. I mean, I don't even know how the hell he does it. I mean, not only is he doing it, he's openly taking questions openly on anything that they want to ask him. And he's just right on top of it, man. Every question, one after the next. Okay, so let's see here. So like every sovereign country does, so we have a right to make sure that you're not going to come to this country and impose a burden on our social safety network. So it looks like we're getting into immigration.
And now we're facing a second challenge, and that is we've admitted a lot of people into the United States. And perhaps the overwhelming majority of them are not bad people and so forth. This is all true. But there are people, we know, okay, for a fact, that there are people in this country who got in through some form of vetting that was wholly insufficient. And we've seen tragic evidence of that very recently, including people that we claim to have vetted. Of it. So, why does that happen? Because there are some places where you can't vet people. You can only vet people on the basis of information you have about them.
Yeah,
but that
what they
information
give
is
you.
Oftentimes dependent on whether there's some local authority that actually has any information about them.
Many of them don't.
So that is the challenge we're facing, which is why the president has sort of put a stop to all of these things until these systems for admitting people into our country can be improved. But I think everyone would understand that after a flood of 15 to 20 million people into our country, almost unrestrained in some extent, over the last 4 years before taking over in January of this year, there's a desire in our country to put a stop to that until we can fix these processes to ensure that not only do we know who's in the country now, but in the future, we're not going to face some of these challenges that we faced in the past. So, look, the United States remains the most generous country in the world when it comes to legal immigration. This year alone, close to 1 million people will enter this country legally and have their green card and go to work. But we do have a right, like every sovereign country does, to know who you are, why you're coming, what you've done in the past, and what we think you might or might not do in the future. We have a right. We have a right to make sure that you're not going to come to this country and pose a burden on our social safety network. All of these things are rights of sovereign countries. A bunch of sovereign countries in the world do it. Most of the countries in the world have far more restrictive immigration policies than the United States has ever had. But we are in a special period right now. This is not like business as usual. This is, right now, we are less than a year removed from the most reckless migratory incompetence in American history.
Oh, it's absolutely
where
fucking
a flood
insane.
of people and mass migration events entered the United States. And they can claim all they want that they vetted people. This is just not true. Some of them were cursory vetting, and in some cases you couldn't vet them, because the countries or places they came from had no documents upon which they could be vetted on.
Absolutely. And what that actually reminds me of the movie Scarface with Al Pacino. If you've seen the movie, at the very, very beginning of the movie, he has an interview with the feds. He's sitting there and they were asking him questions, and really all the feds had to go on was Tony Montana's word. Like they asked him if he's ever been to prison, if he's been into a mental institution. You know, if you've seen the movie or you're familiar with the interview I'm talking about. And they didn't have a database that was from Cuba to access from people coming into the country. And that's the case even to this day with not only a place like Cuba, but from many countries all over, like the third world, most specifically, that there's just, all you really have is just like, you could sit them down and ask them a series of questions, and you know, there's really no way to know whether if they're actually being honest or not. And I'm sure the Biden administration just asked them just basic ass questions. Oh, have you ever been to prison? Nope, never been to prison. Okay, well, you certainly haven't, since you said you weren't. All right, you're free to go. And it was probably just that simple. Okay, so we got another one. So this is from Secretary Marco Rubio himself. So the Secretary of State is not its own government. Neither is the State Department. Our job is to implement the president's foreign policy and provide counsel and ideas to strengthen our nation. That is why our Constitution works, and that is the job I am proud to do.
I get up every day, we go to work.
Oh, it's another quiet one.
Done. We do cooperate and work with. They don't always agree with everything we're doing, but I have a lot of people in the Senate, particularly chairmen of key committees that we interact with. There's things people can say and do in the public that because of politics, in private, that they can't say or do in public. But I don't know what else to comment on that other than one more point, and that is, I think this is important. I think people have lost sort of their mindset here a little bit, okay? The foreign policy, the State Department is not its own government. Okay? The Secretary of State is not its own government. I'm appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then, or nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then appointed by the president. But at the end of the day, the person the people of the United States elected to be the president of the United States and the commander-in-chief is Donald J. Trump. That's who they elected. And my job, and the job of the people in our administration, is to implement the president's foreign policy. We provide advice, we provide counsel, but ultimately our job is to take what the president wants to do, take his vision, and implement it. Come up with options for implementing the president's vision. That's my job today. When I was a senator, I represented the state of Florida. Today, I am the Secretary of State for Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, and my job is to implement the President's foreign policy, provide advice, provide counsel, provide ideas, provide for opportunities and ways in which his foreign policy can be implemented. But in the end, our job is to implement that. And why people think that somehow foreign policy can be divorced from our republic? That's not the way our Constitution works. The Constitution does not say you elect the President of the United States and then you put in place a State Department to undermine the President if the person who's the Secretary of State doesn't agree with him. That's ridiculous. That's stupid, really. And I don't know why anybody would think that. So that's the job I have, and that's the job I'm proud to do. I think we've made a lot of progress. We have a lot more work to do.
I mean, frankly, it's pathetic that he even has to even say that in the first place. But of course he has to say it, because the mainstream media, they just tend to believe that. Like, oh, well, the State Department, they can undermine him if they want because, they just hate Trump. So if they hate Trump, everybody else should hate him too. And everybody should just undermine him at every single turn. So, all right. So anyway, it looks like that's it. Yeah. So that's going to be it for the highlights that I have shared. Again, he took questions from 50 different reporters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this because I only showed like a half a dozen answers that he gave. So that'll be reposted on my X profile. There's a link to my profile in the description below if you want to check that out. You click on that and it'll take you directly to it. And if you see this video at any point over the next 24 hours, then this repost will be like right at the top of my profile because I don't post very heavily on a daily basis. Or you can just go straight to the Department of State at State DEPT. And of course, here on YouTube, I'm sure that there's other channels that they've probably posted this video in its entirety. So I'm sure it's not going to be very difficult to find, but if you want the quickest, most convenient way to find it, just click down in the description. It'll take you straight there. All right. And we're going to move on to the FBI Director, Kash Patel. And he says each day through the end of the year, we'll be sharing with the public some of the institutional changes we've made at the FBI in 2025 under President Trump's leadership to make the Bureau more open, more responsive to the public, and more focused on the mission of protecting the American people. So this one's going to be not crazy long, but it's going to be a bit of a read. So he says there will be changes that you may not have read about in the media over this last year, but they're just as important for the new FBI. December 18th, the FBI reporting structure. When Deputy Bongino and I arrived, the FBI leadership was constructed to have all 50-plus field offices report to one office in Washington, D.C. This created inefficiencies and bureaucracy through no fault of the agents working hard in the field. When we got here, we sent personnel out to the field and then broke down the reporting structure, giving a team of operations directors regional authority over each office. This allowed us to much more efficiently manage each field office and get them to the resources they need to do the job and protect the American people. The results speak for themselves. A 100% increase in violent crime arrests, 35% increase in espionage arrests, 31% increase in fentanyl seizures, a 500% increase in NVE arrests, and more. Making FBI leadership more responsive to the field allowed for the field to be more responsive to the American people who we work for. And that, let's see if he got anything else. Okay, so December 19th, saving taxpayer money at the FBI. So there is some more here. So he says, when we started last spring, we immediately opened the books and looked at ways we can eliminate duplicative functions and use new technology to eliminate wasteful spending at the FBI, and then put those saved resources toward making America safer than ever. We created new CIO and CTO positions to work with the finance office to find inefficiencies and implement new technologies to assist the FBI's mission. We now conduct biweekly meetings to evaluate where we're at, and this process has eliminated tens of millions of dollars in duplicative contracts, unnecessary real estate, outdated technology, and more. These are real savings to the taxpayer, and each budget dollar allocated is intensely scrutinized for value Every dollar we spend, we look for a way to get more value for less. And while saving money is good governance by itself, it's not just a dollar figure. Savings allow us to invest in fixing outdated technology and training the front lines for impact directly felt by Americans. That's partly why you're seeing a record low homicide rate, doubling violent crime arrests, and much more. And looks like that's all that he's got currently. And he did state that each day through the end of the year, they're going to be sharing with the public some of the institutional changes at the FBI. So there's more to come on that, and I'll keep an eye out on FBI Director Kash Patel's profile as he releases more information in his attempt and successful attempt in being more transparent with the American people. And moving on to U.S. Department of Justice. Member of anti-capitalist and anti-government group has been arrested and charged with threatening ICE officers. Quote, this arrest reflects the Justice Department's priority of disrupting and dismantling terrorist networks across the nation, said AG Pam Bondi. We will continue to aggressively target violent extremist groups like the Turtle Island Liberation Front, hold their proxies accountable, and ensure the American people and the officers who protect them can live without fear. Thank you to the U.S. Attorney Zachary Keller in the Western District of Louisiana for his incredible work. And they've got a link here. Let me see if they have at least an image that they had shared with regard to the arrest. I don't think they typically do that on justice.gov, that they'll post like a mugshot. Yeah, they don't. So there's more information on that arrest. Specifically, it was on December 13th. Mika James Legnon, 28, of New Iberia, Louisiana, was arrested on a criminal complaint filed in Western District of Louisiana, charging him with threatening immigrants and customs enforcement officers. And I think I made a mention of this individual. I believe it was either yesterday or it might have been the day before yesterday, but I believe I've already covered that on this show. And from the FBI, malicious actors are impersonating senior U.S. officials via text and AI-generated voice messages and targeting their contacts, including family members. In this scheme, actors reach out to victims and engage them in a brief conversation on a topic they are knowledgeable about. They're using social engineering. They quickly request to move the discussion to a secondary encrypted messaging app. If contacted by someone you know via a new platform or phone number, verify the new contact information through a previously confirmed platform or a trusted source. Read the FBI's new PSA, public service announcement, for tips to spot a fake message and protect yourself from this campaign. And that will, of course, be linked if you want more information on that. Senior U.S. officials continue to be impersonated in a malicious messaging campaign. Just goes to show, man, there's a lot of evil people behind the use of AI. And moving on to Senator Tom Cotton, the diversity lottery is a mockery of our sovereignty. It admits migrants from all over the world based on chance and not merit, making us poorer and less safe. I commend Secretary Noam for ending this farce. And she says the Brown University shooter, which by the way, they finally did get a name, and it appears that I'm assuming that they had apprehended him, which very interestingly, I scroll through stuff all day long and I didn't come across this until just now. So Claudio Manuel Neves Valente entered the United States through the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program, DV1, in 2017, and he was granted a green card. This heinous individual should never have been allowed in the country. In 2017, President Trump fought to end this program following the devastating New York City truck ramming by an ISIS terrorist who entered under the DV1 program and murdered 8 people. At President Trump's direction, I am immediately directing USCIS to pause the DV1 program to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program. Well, to be fair, I would imagine the vast majority of the people who mean harm on the American people are probably already here. They've probably already been admitted through the DV1 program. So let me see if I can get a little bit more info on this individual. Okay, so first I plugged his name into Grok, the AI system that's on the X platform, which gives a brief background on his information. But I went over here to YouTube and I actually came across, where is it? So this is from the New York Post. It's 5 minutes. And it says all about Brown, MIT shooting suspect Claudio Neves Valente, who barked during massacre. So I think I'm going to go with this one. But here at the top, it says that he was found dead. So they located him. They were able to identify him, and he's been found dead. So he's not. Unfortunately, the victims aren't going to be, seeing the perpetrator getting the justice that he definitely deserves. But anyway, so we'll get
after a nearly week-long manhunt that left the nation on edge.
Holy shit, I'm sorry. That was really loud.
Killed two
My
Brown
apologies.
University students and an MIT professor. Authorities were able to follow his trail thanks to the help of a homeless hero who provided them with key information, which led them to a storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. There, they found 48-year-old Claudio Neves Valente dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So who was this demented person who reportedly barked like a dog while he opened fire on his victims? Here's everything you need to know. On Saturday, December 13th, a crazed gunman dressed in black stormed an engineering building at Brown University, killing 2 people and injuring 9 others. In a rampage which left the campus in a panic, a sophomore, Ella Cook, and a freshman, Mohammed Aziz Umerzakov, were named as the victims who lost their lives in the horrific massacre. The killer managed to escape police and remained at large. The Ivy League campus and parts of the Rhode Island capital of Providence were left under lockdown and in a state of terror as a desperate manhunt was underway. Nothing was known about the shooter, whom police have since revealed made a disturbing sound during the massacre.
Some witnesses said he said nothing. There are some that say he made a barking noise. Don't ask me. I don't know why. And that's it. There is no other spoken word.
One of the claims was that he yelled Allahu Akbar.
We are aware of.
Then on Monday, December 15th, an MIT nuclear science professor was shot dead in his $1.4 million home. Respected Professor Nuno Loureiro, a 47-year-old married father of 3, was found lying on his back in the building foyer by a neighbor who heard gunshots and then called 911, along with the academic's wife. Loureiro, who was a native of Viseu, Portugal, later died in the hospital, rocking the quiet and affluent Boston suburb, as once again, the killer got away. There was no description of the shooter and contradictory info given on a possible getaway vehicle. We have a description of a gray sedan with no headlights, an on-scene officer reported, while stressing that we also have a description of a blue or black sedan. In the meantime, investigators were scrambling to ID the gunman who killed the 2 Brown students. Video released by authorities offered a first glimpse at the alleged gunman turning a corner after leaving the area where the shooting took place. He calmly walked onto Hope Street in full dark attire and appeared to be wearing either a hood or a face covering that obscured his face from the cameras. The shooting itself was not captured on camera. Then on December 16th, another grainy image was released of the pudgy person of interest, but authorities remained stumped until finally there was a break when a man posted on Reddit that cops should investigate a possible rented gray Nissan with Florida plates that he spotted in Providence while having an odd interaction with a man. The man had confronted the suspect at the time, saying, "Your car is back there. Why are you circling the block?" The suspect responded, "I don't know you from nobody." And then, "Why are you harassing me?"
And he blew this case right open.
Wow, dude.
He blew it open.
The tipster, known only as John, turned out to be a homeless man who had been living in the basement of the engineering building at the time, sources told Fox News. He bumped into Valente and noticed he was acting suspiciously. Working off John's information, authorities tapped into additional
homeless guy's the hero.
footage that ultimately led them to the gunman. The homeless hero has now been credited with cracking the shootings, as the feds say he is now entitled to the staggering $50,000 reward.
Yeah,
Thanks to John's
he is.
lead, authorities learned that Claudio Neves Valente rented
They ought
the
to
gray
give it to him.
Nissan in Boston and changed its license plates. According to prosecutors, he also used a phone that masked his location and had credit cards that weren't under his name. The gunman was then connected to the death of Loureiro through the rental car and other movements. Security footage captured Valente within a half a mile of Loureiro's home. Authorities also say there is video footage of him entering an apartment building near the location of the professor's apartment. Valente appeared to have shot Loureiro, then driven to a rented storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire. Finally, on the night of Thursday, December 18th, authorities stormed the facility, where they found Valente with a satchel and 2 firearms, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators have since revealed that Claudio Neves Valente was a Portuguese national and a former Brown University graduate student. He also studied in Lisbon with murdered MIT nuclear science professor Nuno Loureiro between 1995 and 2000. The nature of their relationship remains unclear, nor has it been revealed if they stayed in contact. Valente was enrolled at Brown University between 2000 and 2001 in a graduate physics program. He primarily took classes at the university's Barris and Hawley building, where he opened fire on students inside a classroom, according to Brown University President Christina Paxson. It is safe to assume that this man, when he was a student, spent a lot of time in that building, Paxson told reporters. The gunman took a leave of absence from Brown University in April 2001 and formally withdrew from the Ivy League university in 2003. He came to the United States from Portugal on a student visa. Valente received lawful permanent resident status in September 2017, officials said. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed Valente entered the U.S. through the Lottery Immigrant Visa Program DV1 in 2017. He was later granted a green card. This heinous individual should never have been allowed in our country, she wrote. And in a declaration that has implications far beyond this case, she continued, "At President Trump's direction, I am immediately directing USCIS to pause the DV1 program to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program."
Wow, man. That was a lot of info. They gathered all that info up real quick. So, I mean, that's good. It was a really informative video. I'm glad I clicked on that one. And so I'm not going to even go through all this because I'm sure it details everything that was already described in the video. So there you have it. Very unfortunate situation. And man, I'm assuming more information is going to be coming out if those two individuals were linked to the professor that he killed and this dude from Portugal who was let in through the DV1 program. So that's the latest update from the Brown University shooting. And they finally got the guy. Hopefully that homeless dude, like he is entitled to that money. I mean, he's the one who reported the information, which directly led to the identification. And they ended up getting him. He was already dead because he killed himself. But, you know, so hopefully they'll honor that and he'll get that $50,000, man. That'll definitely turn his life around, at least hopefully. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. FBI Director Kash Patel, Yu Huang Xing, a postdoctoral researcher and J-1 visa holder from China, was charged with smuggling Escherichia coli, or E. coli, I can't pronounce it, it's E. coli, into the United States and making false statements about it. This is yet another example of a researcher from China given the privilege to work at a U.S. university who then allegedly chose to take part in a scheme to circumvent U.S. laws and receive biological materials hidden in a package originating from China. The FBI and our CBP partners are committed to enforcing U.S. laws put in place to protect against this global threat to our economy and food supply. If not properly controlled, E. coli and other biological materials could inflict devastating disease to U.S. crops and cause significant financial loss to the U.S. economy. The FBI will not tolerate any attempt to exploit our nation's institutions for illegal activity, as we have seen in this case and the 3 Chinese nationals charged in Michigan in November for allegedly smuggling biological materials into the U.S. on several occasions. The FBI and our partners are committed to defending the homeland and stopping any illegal smuggling into our country. To all universities and their compliance departments, please be vigilant of this trend. Ensure your researchers know that there is a correct and legal way to obtain a license to import and export approved biological materials, and it must be followed without exception. Our continued partnerships will help to better secure our nation and ensure all parties are held accountable. Great work done by the FBI of Indianapolis and FBI of Chicago. And thank you to our partners at CBP for their diligence and key role in this case. Absolutely wild, man. I'm telling you, man, we can't trust the Chinese. Can't trust them. And they're still admitting 300,000 of them as students on an annual basis. Pretty sure the Trump administration is going to roll that back. But I believe I read earlier this year that the Trump administration approved 300,000 to be admitted into the country for higher learning, which I think is insane. All right, so FBI, 4 hours ago, yesterday, a Bangladeshi national was indicted for operating illegal online marketplaces that sold digital templates for false identity documents like U.S. passports and Social Security cards. As part of the investigation, the FBI and our partners seized multiple domains associated with the scheme. I'm imagining that they're probably not going to release the actual details of the names of those websites. Oh, yeah, actually they are. So the indictment alleges that from at least 2021 through 2025, Hassan operated multiple online businesses based out of Bangladesh named TechTreek and e-gift card store BD. These websites electronically sold and transferred digital versions of false government-issued identity and other documents, including U.S. passports, U.S. Social Security cards, and Montana driver's licenses. So, and it goes into further detail on that. So they ended up getting that asshole. So he's going to face justice for that. And they took down the websites. So thank goodness. Okay, Caroline Leavitt from 13 hours ago. She's the White House press secretary. Democrats would rather allow Americans to be murdered by insane illegal aliens than cooperate with ICE to remove them from our country. This is your daily reminder of why mass deportations must continue. And this is from December 18th from Bill Milugin. New ICE confirms that a murder suspect arrested for shooting and killing a man in Reston, Virginia yesterday is a Salvadorian illegal alien who had just been released from the Fairfax County, Virginia jail the day before, with ICE's detainer request ignored. 23-year-old Marvin Morales Ortiz, a citizen of El Salvador, was arrested yesterday following a manhunt after a man was found shot and killed inside a home in Reston, Virginia. Morales Ortiz had been in Fairfax County Jail while facing charges for brandishing a gun and assaulting and injuring someone. But he was released on Tuesday when the case was dropped. ICE says their detainer to transfer him to their custody was ignored by Fairfax County. Of course it was. After his release on Tuesday, Fairfax County Police said that an emergency custody order was obtained for Morales Ortiz due to mental health danger concerns. They looked for him to take him into custody, but they were unable to find him. Well, he was already in your custody, you dicks. He is accused of committing the murder just hours later. Morales has a prior rap sheet showing he's been charged with at least 7 crimes in Fairfax County since 2020. And the statement from ICE, quote, on December 17th, Marvin Fernando Morales Ortiz, a criminal illegal alien from El Salvador with prior criminal charges for assaulting law enforcement first responders, allegedly gunned down a Virginia resident in Reston, Virginia. Fairfax County failed the victim by refusing to work with ICE and releasing this criminal alien onto Virginia streets instead of safely into ICE custody. If Fairfax County would have simply worked to uphold our nation's laws, then this tragedy may have never happened. It wouldn't have happened. He was in jail. He had no firearms. He had no weapons. He was in jail for crying out loud. And that's why it's important for you to keep them in jail so ICE can come and get them, because either way, ICE is going to get them. They're going to get them either way. But these freaking political activists that are working in the state level governments, they're letting them out. So ICE will have to hunt them down in public where everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody's going to record it. And then they're going to drum up the propaganda on mainstream news like they always do. All right. So anyway, let's go on to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's just a couple hours ago. Multiple DUIs, assault, shoplifting, criminal trespass, and wanton endangerment. Anyway, ICE arrested Ignacio Dureno Giron, a Guatemalan criminal illegal alien in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you to our federal partners at the IRS and DEA for defending the homeland with ICE. We'll take a look at this.
So today we got a 47-year-old Guatemalan national. Checks every box as far as community and public safety goes. Domestic violence, DUI, criminal trespass, public indecency. We got a good team out here today. Homeland Security Task Force with some DEA guys, IRS guys. So we'll see what happens.
All right, and another one bites the dust. ICE still working hard. And Breonna Lyman, a massive scandal. Fulton County admits that they violated the rules in 2020 when they certified 315,000 early votes that lacked poll workers' signatures. Quote, we don't dispute the allegation. The SOS also found FC violated official election processes. Fulton County admits 315,000 votes lacking poll workers' signatures were counted in 2020. This is going to be on the Federalist.com. And let's see. Earlier this month, Fulton County admitted that approximately 315,000 early votes from the 2020 election were illegally certified, but were nonetheless still included in the final results of that election. The admission came during a December 9th hearing before the Georgia State Election Board, stemming from a challenge filed by David Cross, a local election integrity activist. Cross filed a challenge with the SEB in March of 2022. Cross alleged that Fulton County violated Georgia statute in the handling of advanced voting ahead of the November 2020 election, counting hundreds of thousands of votes, even though polling workers failed to sign off on the vote tabulation tapes critical to the certification process. And Fulton County admitted to it. And Brumbaugh, attorney for the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections, told the SEB in the hearing that while she has not seen the tapes herself, the county does not dispute that the tapes were not signed. Brumbaugh continued, "It was a violation of the rule. We, since 2020, again, we have new leadership and a new building and a new board and a new standard operating procedures. And since the training has been enhanced, but we don't dispute the allegation from the 2020 election." So what? In other words, they're like, yeah, we messed up, but we totally won't do it again, because it's not like anybody's going to really be held accountable for all this, because they're not. Anyway, Georgia's Secretary of State office investigated the alleged failure to sign tabulation tapes and substantiated the findings that Fulton County violated official election record document processes when it was discovered that 36 out of 37 advanced voting precincts in Fulton County, Georgia, failed to sign the tabulation tapes as required by statute, according to a 2024 investigation summary. In addition to probing the unsigned tabulation tapes, the investigation also found that officials at 32 polling sites failed to verify their zero tapes. So whenever you hear Trump say that the election was stolen, there's a lot of validity to that. And this is a perfect example. So Georgia law requires that election officials have each ballot scanner print 3 closing tapes at the end of each voting day. Poll workers must sign these tapes or include a documented reason for refusal. Voting laws also require poll workers to begin each day of voting by printing and signing a quote-unquote zero tape, showing that voting machines are starting at 0 votes. If there is no record of whether the tabulator was set at 0 at the start of polling, there is no way of telling whether ballots from a previous election or ballots from a test run were left on the memory card and might later be counted. Notably, this happened in Montana, where officials discovered more votes than were cast and believed the votes were leftover sample data that had not been cleared. Quote, "These signed tapes are the sole legal certification that the reported totals are authentic," Cross told the SEB at the December 9th hearing. Fulton County produced 0 signed tabulator tapes in early voting. Cross stated that he obtained 77 megabytes of election records from Fulton County through an open records request that cost $15,800. Imagine that, almost $16,000 for 77 megabytes. I mean, we're not talking terabytes of information here. According to Cross, these included 134 tabulator tapes representing 315,000 votes. Each signature block on these tapes was blank, Cross said. Cross also highlighted additional irregularities, such as polling locations being open at impossibly late hours like 2:09 a.m. Cross also said he found duplicated scanner serial numbers where the memory devices were removed from one scanner and printed on an alternate scanner. Now, you might have remembered back on election night of 2020, and there were buildings it was in Pennsylvania, where they kicked out the poll watchers, the Republican poll watchers, because by law they're allowed to be in there to oversee the counting process. Well, they were forced out of the building. Then they locked the doors, and then they put up brown paper over all the windows. That was all on camera. They showed that on the news. And surprise, surprise, we all know what happened. Ultimately, quote, "These are not clerical errors. They are catastrophic breaks in chain of custody and certification," Cross said. Because no tape was ever legally certified, Fulton County had no lawful authority to certify its advanced voting results to the Secretary of State, yet it did, Cross said. And Secretary Raffensperger accepted and folded those uncertified numbers into Georgia's official total without questioning them. This is not partisan. This is statutory. This is the law. When the law demands 3 signatures on tabulator tapes and the county fails to follow those rules, those 315,000 votes are, by definition, uncertified. And why would they do that? It just makes you wonder, if they weren't cheating, if they had no funny business going on in the background, why would they have not certified these? It just begs the question. If you wanted everything to be on the up and up, why wouldn't you sign off on this? And what did they say? It was like in 18 and 19 jurisdictions, or here it is. 36 out of 37 advanced voting precincts in Fulton County, Georgia, failed to sign the tabulation tapes. So it wasn't just one single precinct. it was widespread. It was all over the county. So anyway, so Cross is asking all right, here, let me see if if I skipped over anything. Okay, so Kevin Moncla, an election integrity activist who has been at the forefront of these challenges, estimates the number is likely higher than 315,000. Cross is asking the SCB to impose sanctions on Fulton County, have them publicly acknowledge their violations, and for the state to decertify Fulton County's 2020 advanced voting results. It's not to change who sits in the White House or what the score was, but instead to place an indelible and permanent asterisk on the record and finally force accountability. The Federalist inquired with the Georgia Secretary of State's office as to who was responsible for accepting Fulton County's tabulator tapes, despite there being no signatures at all. The office did not return a request for comment at the time of publication. And like I said earlier, there's going to be no accountability to this. Even if they put in an asterisk, what the hell is that going to do? I mean, what is to stop them from doing the same thing all over again? Not really much of anything. I mean, all of this is already in the law, but nobody's going to get in trouble for this. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. Matter of fact, somebody should be going to prison over that. Not just one person, but I would argue everybody who failed to sign off on that, of all those different precincts, every single one of those people should be thrown in prison for that. They absolutely should have, because they knew their responsibility and they didn't follow it. They should be hit with, maybe arguably, they should be hit with a felony count for every single illegal vote that they didn't sign off on. It's my opinion, 315,000 felonies. How about that? All right, U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and she says, as we head into the new year, this is where Republicans and Democrats stand on American health care. So let's hear what she has to say about the healthcare situation.
There is a clear pattern with Democrat governance. Policies are put forward without regard for long-term consequences, and the American people are left to deal with the fallout. We saw it with stifled energy production, immigration policies that left our border unsecured, and efforts to defund the police that placed public safety at risk in communities across the country. These outcomes were not accidents. They were the result of poor policy choices. The American people responded by electing Republicans to correct course. Since then, we have worked to expand American energy production, strengthen border security, and support law enforcement so communities can be safe again. Today, millions of Americans face the consequences of the same flawed policy decisions regarding health care and affordable health insurance. Last week, Senate Republicans voted for reforms to make health care affordable again. Democrats responded by voting to continue sending billions of tax dollars directly to insurance companies and to subsidize health care for the rich. But let's be clear about health care. Republicans had no role in creating the Affordable Care Act. Democrats wrote it, passed it, and structured it, including the bonus subsidies they chose to let expire not once but twice. From the beginning, Obamacare has increased costs for consumers and hospitals. It has also given insurance companies too much control. Republicans did not design this system, we did not vote for it, and we are not responsible for its flaws. The expiration of these Biden-era bonus subsidies creates an opportunity to reassess what is and is not working in our healthcare system. Real progress will require both sides to come to the table and move beyond temporary fixes toward reasonable, long-term solutions. So far, Democrats have not been willing to do that, but that is how we can take the next step forward. This is a familiar pattern. Democrats leave behind broken policies and Republicans step in to fix them. We were handed a broken healthcare system that we did not create.
Well, yeah, she is right about that. 0 Republican votes got Obamacare passed, not a single one. Same with the subsidies. And there is no doubt that these profits are going to insurance companies directly from the taxpayers, really. And they are benefiting rich people because there's not everyday average middle class or poor people that are benefiting from profits of health insurance companies. Okay, so Senate Republicans, 9 hours ago, unhinged Michigan Democrat Mallory McMorrow says she wants to hurl beers at conservative Supreme Court justices. And they have a quote. Let's hear what this is all about.
Well. There's a Democratic Michigan Senate candidate, Mallory McMorrow. She had some strong feelings about people she might see in the street and what she would do to them, including 2 Supreme Court justices who are from the conservative side, Kavanaugh and Barrett. Watch here.
Notre Dame grad and Amy Coney Barrett coming out of my university makes me very excited. Just on a personal level, I talked to somebody yesterday who said they saw her with Brett Kavanaugh at a tailgate last weekend. I was like, I would not be able to control myself. That would be bad. There would be beers thrown in people's faces.
And Mark, this isn't new. If you look back
Unhinged,
to Maxine Waters,
moron, brain dead, psychopathic idiot.
You see this turnout here? You ain't seen nothing yet. Women are going to control their bodies no matter how they try and stop us. The hell with the Supreme Court.
You start by closing your damn legs. How about that?
I want to tell you, Kavanaugh.
You want to have a kid? Quit banging a bunch of dudes.
Mark, your thoughts here.
Oh, these people are idiots.
So I can't stand Chuck Schumer and Maxine Waters, but I don't have an uncontrolled desire to
Yeah,
throw
I'm not
beer
going to
in
chuck
their
fucking
face.
beer at them.
I
Fucking
just
idiots.
don't understand the kind of uncontrolled rage that some of these Democrats have against people with whom they disagree with on politics.
Well, it's stretching out into conservative derangement syndrome. That's what it's becoming. It's becoming conservative derangement syndrome. That's what it's going to evolve to. If it's not already been there, it is already there. That's where we're at, basically. Okay, Whatley War Room. So Whatley, North Carolina. He is proud North Carolinian. Trump endorsed conservative running for U.S. Senate to defend our values and secure America's future. And he says on GOP voter registration gains in North Carolina, quote, a lot of that is Democrats who left the party because the Democratic Party continues to move left. Roy Cooper and the Democratic leadership are out of step with Main Street, North Carolina, and that's why we're seeing Republicans come forward. But we've got to take it to the ballot box. Yeah, I mean, there's been a huge swing in North Carolina with regard to registered Democrats and registered Republicans. I just covered that the other day right here on the Swamp. That was it just a few years ago. There were over 300,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in North Carolina. And as of today, it's right at about 1,000 in the difference. There's like 1,018 more registered Democrats than Republicans. And the vast majority of them had flipped to the other party because they showed the gains coming from the Republicans, which was almost the exact same amount. Like they gained close to 300,000 Republicans in that same time frame. So they're jumping ship. They're jumping to the other side over in North Carolina.
North Carolina has dramatically shifted to the GOP in recent years. Not necessarily the shift is...
Okay, yeah, so here we go. It was way bigger than I thought. Okay, I thought it was like 300,000. But see, they're going back to 2015. I think the number I saw was like 3-4 years ago. But in 2015, there were 670,000 more Democrat voters in North Carolina than Republicans. And as of today, it's only 1,216.
Shocking, but just this huge
that is
number
insane,
in about
dude.
10 years. There were more than
unsurprising
670,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in North Carolina back in 2015. Now that number down to just over 1,000.
Once you flip red, you're not turning
Democrats. Back. Can the president and you turn that, what I'm going to call registration momentum, into wins in the Tar Heel state?
We absolutely can. You know, when President Trump carried North Carolina all 3 times, when I took over as the state party chair back in 2019, that delta was 450,000, and we have seen a very steady progression. A lot of that is Democrats who've left the party because the Democratic Party continues to move left. Roy Cooper and the Democratic leadership are out of step with Main Street, North Carolina, and that is why we're seeing the Republicans come forward. But we've got to take it to the ballot box.
Yeah, man, it's good to hear. It's good that people are freaking waking up and people are starting to become more aware. I mean, it kind of sucks. That's the way it's got to be. But you know what? Everybody's got to be at least politically aware in some way, shape, or form, especially these days. All right, and this is from Pete Hegseth from earlier today. Don't worry. We will not let go, or we will not let off the gas one bit. Thank you and Merry Christmas. And he's responding to Putin. I have no idea who this lady is. I don't know what her following's looking like. 76,000 followers. So it's about a medium-sized X account. And she said, this is what protecting kids looks like. Let's see what this is all about.
Else is going to say it, I will. Mr. Pete Hegseth, I'm speaking to you as a mother with 2 teenage daughters. And I want to say this.
Are you married? Probably not.
And loudly as possible. Keep going, sir. Do not let off that gas.
Oh, okay. All right, never mind. I thought she was a brain dead leftist.
Flooding our country with fentanyl. Because knowing that there
well, statistically, she's probably not married either way.
To stop that poison from coming into this country, lets this mama breathe just a little bit easier. Because while these bleeding hearts are crying online about criminals being stopped, Tens and thousands of Americans are dying from overdoses. 70 to 75% of those deaths
I think it's close to 100,000 actually.
And let's stop lying about who's paying the price. It's our teenagers. It's our young adults. So no, I'm not sitting over here just clutching my pearls because 80 to 95 traffickers got their dirt nabbed. I'm too busy worried about the tens of thousands of families who will never get a second chance. I won't shed not one tear for people who profit off addiction. I won't lose any daggum sleep over supply chains that are built on dead kids. This is what leadership looks like. This is what accountability looks like. This is what protecting a nation's children actually looks like. I voted for actions.
Yeah, get it at the source, man.
I voted for protection.
Blow it up at the source.
Not performative outrage. So, Mr. Pete Hegseth, sir, thank you. Thank you for finally putting American kids first.
Well, actually, as a matter of fact, the Trump administration, they keep hinting that they're going to do just that. They're going to start getting closer to the source and start moving some operations on land and not just be targeting the narco-terrorists that are out at sea. So not sure if that's really going to be the move that they end up making, but it just seems like that they're inching closer to that. I mean, they're stationing more ships all around Venezuela. And Trump just said the other day that they've got Venezuela virtually surrounded at this point. So it kind of makes you wonder, are they going to actually start moving, forces into Venezuela? I don't know if they will or not. That's really going to be a very complicated situation, especially with the involvement that Iran has with Venezuela at this point. And I'm sure Cuba does too. And, I wouldn't be surprised for a second if China's got some ties in with Venezuela. So I don't know, man, that might rock the boat in more ways than one, but it actually turned out to be a really good video. I thought, I'm so used to on this show, whenever there's an official, especially a cabinet member or a senator, and if they're responding to just an everyday, just normie, just a regular account, it's like 95% of the time they're responding to negativity. So that actually caught me off guard. Probably should have read her profile, but actually, you know what? Well, faith, family, and freedom, that was kind of a hint, but with a lot of accounts, they'll say like proud conservative or, what have you. But anyway, that was a breath of fresh air, and she's absolutely right. Just keep at it. Keep fighting the good fight. Pete Hegseth, don't let off that gas. And Merry Christmas. All right, so Rep. Claudia Tenney, this year, House GOP stopped a massive tax hike, expanded relief for working Americans, lowered healthcare costs for seniors, and secured major incentives for small manufacturers. This is real economic momentum heading into the new year. And let's see. Okay, so she doesn't have anything article-wise, but they do say end the filibuster. So, yeah, a lot of people are still shouting end the filibuster. Get rid of the filibuster. I don't think they're going to do it, though. I would certainly agree that they ought to, because would not in any way at all surprise me that if Democrats retake the Senate, even as early as the midterms, that they're going to do just that. Actually, I'll take that back. They might not nuke it if there's a Republican-controlled House, and with whether if it's Trump or if it's a Republican subsequent to that. Not sure if nuking the filibuster would really benefit a whole hell of a lot. But if they end up taking all three, yeah, better believe they're going to nuke the filibuster at this point. I would almost bet anything on it, really, at this point. All right, Social Security. Senate confirms Arjun Modi as Deputy Commissioner of Social Security. We look forward to welcoming him to SSA. And this is from Rapid Response. Confirmed 97 more of President Trump's nominees. The Senate has now confirmed 417 of his nominees since January, far outpacing Biden's first year. Here are those 97 most recently confirmed nominees. And I won't go through them one after the next. I mean, if you want to pause the video, you can. Matter of fact, they're gonna list out all 90, aren't they? Holy shit! All right, so what I will do, I'll just go ahead and repost this so you can have a look for yourself if you want to check it out on my profile. Again, direct link is in the description below. But I believe most of these aren't these like mostly civilian. I think they're civilian appointees that they have been waiting to confirm all year. So quite a lot of them, man. That's good news. Trying to get them all put through. I mean, probably most of them should have probably been confirmed way earlier this year, but I guess it's better late than never. Okay, and that's not a video, right? No, that's just an image. Okay, so Chuck Grassley, in 2025, the Senate confirmed 31 U.S. attorneys, which is on pace with first year of Biden administration, and 26 federal judges. That's 7 more judges than first year of Trump's first term. As chairman of the judiciary, I will continue advancing and confirming I want President Trump's nominees to be successful. And this is from the National Guard. For the past 11 years, Washington National Guard members have helped state and local partners respond to flooding across western parts of the state. Members of the impacted communities have taken to social media to express their appreciation for the dedication of these guardsmen. As a resident of Burlington, I want to express my thanks to the men and women who have responded. You are appreciated. Thank you for your service. Couldn't have arrived at a better time for our volunteer sandbagging crew who have been at it all day. To see you all jump out fresh and enthusiastic to sling hundreds more bags of heavy, wet sand. So thankful they are here, sleeping in cots, working in the wet and cold, saving lives and property. Thank you. That's crazy with all this flooding going on in Washington, man. Of the left, they'll say climate change. Of course, it's climate change. Climate's always changing. I mean, I thought it would always rain in Washington, Western Washington. All right, man. Thank you very much to the National Guard who's helping out the fine citizens in the state of Washington with all the flooding. And okay, so this is from CBP from 8 hours ago. It's just a GIF of that old TV show Dinosaurs. I remember that show when I was a kid. We used to watch it, and it was a hilarious show, a very unique show for sure. So they're responding to CBP in Chicago. A passenger from Congo believed the food they were bringing was fine. It was not. In the passenger suitcase, O'Hare agriculture specialists found 11 pounds of beans with pests and 17 pounds of unknown plants and also 4 pounds of non-human primate meat. These items are prohibited. They were seized and they were destroyed. And it's viewer discretion advised. I probably should have said that already, but yeah, it's what appears to me to be like a mummified primate, but they had it all wrapped up and they were shipping it in to be used for meat, I guess. So they found that while somebody was coming through the airport. I'm assuming through, well, it was in O'Hare, Chicago. So the Chicago O'Hare Airport. And I'm assuming it was coming in through customs. Well, yeah, it was because it was coming from the Congo. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's something that they don't see every day. It's absolutely freaking nasty. I was like, why the hell? Like, I don't know, whatever. I get it. Different cultures, different, possible religious practices, whatever. But they seized it and they destroyed it. All right, BLS labor statistics from 10 hours ago. In 2024, output increased in 15 of the 21 major industries, and all of these industries, except for agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, had increases in combined inputs. And they have details, looks like charts, data, statistics, all that good stuff. So total factor productivity, combined inputs, and output percentage change for major industries in the year of 2024. So, they've got agriculture, forestry, fishing, which they said that wasn't one of them that had positive output. But there's mining, utilities, construction, manufacturing, durable manufacturing, non-durable manufacturing, trade, transportation and warehousing, information, finance, insurance, and real estate, and services. And we got one more from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Labor productivity increased in 16 of 21 industries in 2024, led by the educational services industry. And it's going to be the same thing. They got a whole line of different industries: mining, finance, information, retail, trade, educational services, which is the one with the largest growth. And so there you go. The contributions to labor productivity percent change for major industries from last year. And rolling on to the next thing from the office of the First Lady, the Green Room. This is what the Green Room looks like in the White House right now. I don't know if there's any... Oh, yeah, it's like a crackling fire. With very quiet music. Okay, yeah, so that's in the Green Room. In the White House. Okay, from the U.S. National Archives. Oh, yeah, let me adjust that. Okay, so are you planning your holiday menu and need some inspiration? Look no further. The National Archives has you covered. Swipe for more salty, some sweet Presidential Library holiday recipes and unwrap our entire Archives Recipes Cookbook, which can be found, interestingly, on Tumblr of all places. I haven't even seen or heard anything from or about Tumblr in years. I didn't even know Tumblr was even still around. So that's where you can find their recipes. Archives Recipes, a culinary journey through the catalog. And not sure how long it is. This is the first time I'm looking at it. And let me see, like, they got some images here. So let's see, Reagan's favorite mac and cheese comfort food in the White House. So that's one of them. And they also have an image of Bill and Hillary Clinton's roasted rack of lamb with a pumpkin thyme crust, a presidential dinner party dish. They've got all the instructions on how to make that. Obama's cranberry upside-down cake, a modern presidential dessert. And Laura Bush's cowboy cookies, a Texas-sized treat. So that's cool. If you're looking for new recipes, they got some to offer. And from the U.S. Department of the Interior, in March of 1778, Washington reminded his troops that their sacrifices had purpose, writing that he was unceasingly focused on relieving their suffering and bringing their efforts to a speedy and prosperous issue. Actually, I think I might have actually put these backwards. Yeah, I think I did. Here, let me start with this one. On December 19th of 1777, General George Washington, his troops, and hundreds of civilians marched into Valley Forge in southeastern Pennsylvania. Over the months that followed, they built an encampment of 1,500 log huts and miles of fortifications that functioned as a small city. And that was on this day in 1777. And they also have this post. This was the third winter of the 8-year Revolutionary War, and soldiers faced hunger, sickness, and extreme hardship. The winter at Valley Forge was brutal, yet the Continental Army emerged more unified and resilient, strengthened by shared hardship and steady leadership. And then this was the final one. March 1778, Washington reminded his troops that their sacrifices had purpose, writing that he was unceasingly focused on relieving their suffering and bringing their efforts to a speedy and prosperous issue. So yeah, man, on this day, way back in 1777, which, math isn't my strongest suit, but it is 248 years to the day since that occurred. And Energy and Commerce Committee this week at House GOP, they passed Rep. M. Griffiths and Rep. Balderson's bills that will help strengthen our grid and increase energy reliability, all while lowering costs. Energy demand is only on the rise, and Republicans are working to ensure no Americans strapped with rising prices or potential blackouts, all because of bad energy policy. American Energy Dominance passed this week, the Power Plant Reliability Act and the Reliable Power Act. And another one from Energy and Commerce Committees, the committee, energy costs went up over 20% for the last 4 years because of disastrous left-wing policies under the Biden-Harris administration. House GOP is working to make energy more affordable by ending subsidies for unreliable sources like wind and solar and unleashing proven, affordable sources like natural gas, oil, and coal. A bit disappointed that they're not including nuclear here, but I get it. It takes years to build nuclear facilities. I know that is definitely on their agenda. I believe that I don't think that they've broken ground necessarily, but they've got 10 facilities, large nuclear facilities that they're planning on building in the short term. So that'll definitely be some added relief to higher energy costs. And moving on to the White House, trust in Trump. Trump defies odds, achieves economic triple play with rate cuts, tariffs, and cooling inflation. And a post from the man himself saying it's all happening. And the White House, they usually link articles. So maybe they didn't this time. Nope, doesn't look like they did this time, which that's fine. It's all right. But the headline, it's from Just the News. So matter of fact, let me see if I can at least find it so I can link that. Okay, and I got it right here, so I'll link that if you want to take a look at that. Trump defies odds, achieves economic triple play with rate cuts, tariffs, and cooling inflation. And rolling on to the next topic. I think we're getting pretty close to the end here. So U.S. Central Command. U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, joined a nonprofit organization December 18th in providing care packages to the families of service members deployed in the Middle East region. And you can read more here on CENTCOM.mil, where they were giving care packages, families and troops receiving holiday care packages, which happened, which is very cool.
CENTCOM families and troops receive holiday care packages. Story by for the U.S. Central Command Public Affairs.
Story by.
Tampa, Florida. U.S. Central Command.
Hey, that's my neck of the woods. I live in Tampa Bay.
Joined a nonprofit organization, December 18th, in providing care packages to the families of service members deployed in the Middle East region. CENTCOM personnel distributed hundreds of care packages and teddy bears to family members as an expression of gratitude and encouragement during the holiday season. The care packages were donated through Operation Gratitude, a nationwide nonprofit that helps support deployed troops and their families.
Okay, all right, I can read the rest. I'm not that lazy. Quote, "This event is an expression of our gratitude to our families with loved ones deployed," said Deborah Hooks, CENTCOM's community program specialist. Quote, "We recognize their support from back home and want to ensure they know we are thinking of them and are here for them." Additionally, CENTCOM facilitated the distribution of more than 4,000 care packages directly to service members operating from various locations, including Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. Quote, "We ask a lot from our warfighters and their families, and this is a small thank you to show our appreciation for what they do for our country," said U.S. Army Major General Richard Harrison, CENTCOM's chief of staff. Headquartered at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, CENTCOM directs and enables military operations and activities to promote stability, security, and prosperity across the Middle East, Central Asia, and South Asia. At any given time, 40,000 troops are deployed across CENTCOM's operating area. And this comes from Pete Stauber. "Our broken permitting system is blocking critical mining projects like Twin Metals, New Range, and Talon Metals from moving forward, while also delaying essential roads, transportation, and water infrastructure. Thankfully, the House passed the SPEED Act yesterday. This bill will cut red tape and get America moving again." You can read the full release down in the description below, starting with stauber.house.gov. Cut the delays, cut the costs. And from Bethany Stevens, this is going to be the last post. "It's been an incredible week for America's space program. Jared Isaacman sworn in as NASA's administrator. The president signs new national space policy. DISC-SAT mission expands access to orbit, and NASA science maps the cosmos. America's golden age of exploration is underway." Take a look at this.
Administrator, new missions, and new discoveries across the agency. As NASA looks ahead to the next chapter of exploration, teams across the agency kept moving forward. Let's get into it in this week's NASA Minute. On Wednesday, Jared Isaacman, President Trump's nominee for NASA Administrator, was confirmed by the United States Senate and sworn into office, becoming the 15th Administrator of NASA. He steps into this role as NASA advances the golden age of exploration, from the moon to Mars and beyond. Welcome to NASA, Jared.
Day one on the job, just getting sworn in, I go right to the Oval Office where the president signs a national space policy. So priorities are super clear. We're going to return to the moon. We've got a mission coming up in just a matter of months. We're going to establish infrastructure on the moon. We're going to build a moon base. And we're going to do all the other things like investing in nuclear propulsion, deep space exploration, and science.
Yeah, and that's true, by the way. They're
They're
literally going to build a moon base.
Come and work for NASA. I have no doubt everybody's going to get really reinvigorated in the mission. We're going to get the job done.
4 disc-shaped satellites lifted off aboard a Rocket Lab Electron rocket in the company's Launch Complex 2 on Wallops Island, marking a new step forward in small spacecraft innovation. This mission, DISC-SAT, is designed to expand scientific opportunities and lower the cost of access to space. By testing a new spacecraft form factor, this mission gives engineers greater flexibility in how future missions are designed, helping NASA and its partners move faster, more affordably, and with greater impact. NASA's Interstellar Mapping and Acceleration Probe, or IMAP, has recorded its first light, with all 10 instruments successfully returning their first initial measurements as the spacecraft begins its science journey. IMAP is already beginning to map the edge of the heliosphere, the vast bubble carved out by the solar wind that surrounds our entire solar system. This will help scientists better understand how space weather affects our planet, safeguarding astronauts, satellites, and critical technology here on Earth. NASA, in partnership with Boeing, recently tested a new wing design in our wind tunnel at Langley Research Center, activating movable control surfaces to stabilize aircraft wings in gusty conditions. The test showed a clear reduction in wing flutter, a key challenge facing future airliners with longer, thinner wings designed to improve ride comfort and reduce fuel use. NASA is shaping the next generation of safer, more efficient aircraft. NASA's SPHERE-X space telescope has completed its first full map of the entire sky, capturing the universe in 102 different infrared colors, more than any all-sky map ever made. Launched in March, SPHERE-X is surveying the sky in unprecedented detail, giving scientists a new tool to explore some of the biggest questions in cosmology. That's your look at the week across NASA. Thanks for watching.
All right, man, that is awesome. Way to go from NASA. And that'll do it for this episode of The Swamp. And I'm off to go get some spicy Chinese food and get my weekend going. I'm not sure if I'll put out any new videos this weekend, but I'll play it by ear and I'll just see what happens. So anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It'll mean a lot to me if you subscribe, and I'll drop a new show every evening covering the swamp Monday through Friday. Everyone in the swamp, the politicians, bureaucrats, and the agencies. Also, I post on X, so feel free to comment over there too if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your night and a great weekend, and God bless America.